much. And first of all, very good morning to all panelists and participants. And many thanks to Strive India for organizing this webinar on a very important and topical issue and for inviting me. When I was thinking about what I'm going to say, I thought, I would speak on three sets of issues relating to India, Nepal, China. Now, the first set of issues I wanted to speak about is the manner in which, both in qualitative terms and in terms of the diversity of engagement and the intensity of engagement, I think there has been a sea change in the Nepal-China relationship. In the old days, China was very concerned about the Tibetan issue and the fact that there were a lot of Tibetan refugees in Nepal. And, they were very worried in terms of inimical influences emanating from these groups and, affecting them in Tibet. And historically, the Chinese basically dealt with the monarchy in Nepal. That was their one point of contact. And they were happy to deal with it. And so they had relatively limited engagement and role. Of course, they were participating in certain economic development projects, etc. But in recent years, and especially, in the second decade of the present century, there has been a huge change, both qualitatively and the range of issues that Nepal and China are now engaged in. And of course, all this was formalized during the visit of President Xi Jinping to Nepal in November 2019, when the relationship was elevated to a strategic partnership, which basically meant a very comprehensive enhancement of relations every sphere of bilateral activity. And today, the engagement is not limited to the economic aspects. Of course, the Belt and Road Initiative is a very big project which China has all over the world and also in Nepal. In Nepal, it's known as the multimodal sort of connectivity, trans-Himalayan connectivity project. And, this is a multi-billion-dollar project which involves development of roads, rail links, several land and sea ports have been provided, fresh transit arrangements have been made. So, very, very large project. But what I'm saying is that apart from the economic cooperation today, China is very deeply engaged in both defense cooperation with the Nepalese military and also at a political and party-to-party level. So this is something very recent and very new. And I think this is something that India really needs to watch very carefully. Just to give you some instances of, the kind of developments that have taken place. On the economic side, two very significant projects. There is a 1,200 megawatt hydroelectric project that was given to China on a government-to-government basis. Similarly, there is the airport project in Pokhara, which has been given to China on a government-to-government basis. And, you contrast this with the projects that India is doing. We are doing two 900 megawatt hydroelectric projects, the Upper Karnali project, the Arun 3 project. And, these were given to India on the basis of global competitive bidding. So there's a very different style of engagement between the two countries and all kinds of allegations. And secondly, even in projects where China is offering assistance to Nepal, the terms and conditions on which this assistance is offered are, generally poorer than what India offers. For instance, on our lines of credit, we offer a 1% rate of interest, whereas China offers 2%. But despite that, I think China has made, significant inroads, in terms of the economic activities. On defense cooperation, for instance, I don't recall in recent memory, you're all generals, many of you are from the, all of you are from the armed forces. I don't recall in recent memory any visit by the Indian Minister of Defense to Nepal. We've had visits of the Chinese Minister of Defense to Nepal. and we now have joint military exercises between China and Nepal. This is something that the Nepalese army used to do only with India. So I think this is also one aspect, that we need to, we really need to keep in mind. But it's really the political relationship, I think, that we also need to look at very carefully. As there's an ascendance of the communists in Nepal. And the Chinese have been very actively engaged in trying to unify all the communist forces in Nepal and to make them into a dominant communist force. And they have established very strong party-to-party links between the Chinese Communist Party and the, erstwhile Nepalese Communist Party. And I'm told that things like Xi Jinping thought are discussed. There is training in terms of what kind of relationship you should have between the party and the government. What is the role of the party in national development? So somehow or the other, there is a sense that, the Chinese are trying to make the communist force in Nepal or mold it in terms of, they have the same image as that of the Chinese Communist Party, and they're trying to train, the Nepalese communists in this direction. Of course, with recent developments, this has, there has been a bit of a setback. The unified Nepalese Communist Party has been divided after a Supreme Court judgment, and right now there's a lot of turmoil in Nepal. We don't really know how it's going to play out. But having said that, I think the Chinese strategic interest seems to be to strengthen the communist dominance in Nepal, and work for a consolidation of these communist forces. So this is something that obviously India needs to be, to look at very carefully. The other thing, of course, is that, even in the soft power area, whether it is Buddhism, whether it's people-to-people exchanges, education opportunities, tourism, China is making big inroads. I mean, if you go to Thamel in Kathmandu, which is the main sort of tourist drag, it looks like a Chinatown today. If you go to Pokhara, you'll find virtually every restaurant in Pokhara has a menu in the Chinese script. So clearly, there is a very strong push of China in Nepal. And it's not only at the bilateral level. You also have this at the sub-regional level. And, during COVID times, we have seen that China has started a dialogue between various countries of South Asia that are all members of the SAARC association and are also active supporters and collaborants in the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, the 4 such meetings have been held at high levels. And the idea, of course, we were told, was to discuss COVID-related issues. But another aspect that is being discussed is whether there are synergies in terms of the various BRI programs, in each of these countries, Nepal, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and whether lessons can be learned, and, whether there are commonalities, and whether these countries should cooperate. So it's not just at the bilateral level, but even at the sub-regional level, there is an increase. Having said this, I still want to assert that, nobody can replace India in Nepal. I think our geography, our cultural connect, the economic relationship means that India will continue to be the dominant player. But over a period of time, I see that incrementally China is making headway. And, this is something we really have to be cognizant of. The second set of issues I wanted to talk about was, why is this happening? What has happened? Of course, at one level, China is a very powerful country, very deep pockets. They are, increasing and expanding their footprint all over the world.
So sorry
And
for
obviously, they will do that
sorry for
in
interrupting. Could you kindly conclude, please?
In South Asia. Okay, so then, there are a lot of reasons. One point I wanted to make is that Nepal there is a divergence in terms of security perceptions between Nepal and India today. India sees China primarily as a threat. Nepal sees China primarily as an opportunity. And the Nepalese government and the younger people, you see China with a lot of resources and want to benefit from that. So I think our policy planners have to have to look at this. And all the downturns in the India-Nepal relationship obviously encourage Nepal to play the China card, and China reciprocates in full measure. I think somebody mentioned the 2015 differences that existed between India and Nepal, and that is one factor that has certainly contributed to growing Chinese presence. But I don't think the only factor. I think China's role would have increased irrespective of whether or not differences had persisted between India and Nepal. Lastly, since there's not much time and I've just been reminded that I should wind up, how do we deal with this? And I think there are several initiatives that India needs to take. First, we have to step up our own act. Our economic engagement in Nepal has to be stepped up. Our long-term strategy is to integrate the sub-region to create a common economic space. And the best way of doing that is through connectivity projects. Through doing hydroelectric projects in Nepal where electricity is sold to India. It's also to bring in like-minded countries to help us in achieving this strategic objective of economic integration. We can't do all projects ourselves. We don't have the resources. We should get in partners who will help us in this. Secondly, there's huge complaints in, that Indian implementation is very poor. Chinese implementation is much better. So I think we need to get our act together on that. Thankfully, now at the G7 summit in the UK, there is a new initiative. Details have not yet come in, but this is the B3W initiative, Build Back Better World. And, hopefully this will be an additional option available to countries now. So far, BRI was the only game in town. With this, hopefully things will change. We need, as I said, to be engaged with like-minded countries on all issues in Nepal. And we also, in Nepal itself, I think we need to step up our engagement with all political actors. There is a sense that India is dealing more with the government of the day, which has become very autocratic, very undemocratic, not popular, to the neglect of other actors. This is not, I think, we need to be and last is also that India has very strong economic engagement with China, and Nepal complains that look, everything we do with China is seen as a security threat by India, and especially when India itself is so deeply engaged with China, and trade is almost is $80-90 billion. So why does Nepal have a problem if China, if Nepal, why does India have a problem if Nepal does something with China? And I think this is something that we should also reflect on. So I want to conclude with those words. Thank you.